Here we go. Thank you for being in class, everyone. So if you have any questions or comments, you can certainly do them, over the chat, or you can join the conversation, if you have a microphone. So today, in the previous lessons, we talked, about tectonic plates and some of the effects that this movement of the Earth causes. We saw about volcanic activities and then tsunamis and how the Earth kind of releases its pressure that way and so on. Today we are going to talk about three different Earth processes that happen that are kind of slower, all right, or they are more subtle. Okay, so we are going to talk about weathering and erosion and sedimentation. So in the family school, in the lesson, we have really good definitions of these processes, of what they are. So you can certainly read this in the lesson. I also have links in the lesson to the articles in Wikipedia about erosion, weathering, and sedimentation. Okay, so do you know, have you heard about these processes before? Do you know what they are? What are the differences between erosion and weathering? Where do you see those happening? How fast do they happen? How fast do these processes occur? Any comments, suggestions? Okay. What do you know about these Earth processes? Any guesses? Any ideas? Go
I
ahead.
got one. Question about what's different between the weather and erosion.
Uh-huh.
Erosion isn't erosion the action of the weather, because erosion has to do with how the weather acts, and the weather might not always be in the state of erosion. It might just be a regular 8-degree day, clouds in the sky, mostly sunny. And then with erosion, it could be raining or snowing or hailing.
Okay. So could be, okay. So the processes, so I think that what you are talking is about the weather patterns, okay? So this is a slightly different from that. The question was what is the process of erosion, okay, and what is the difference between erosion and weathering, okay? So what I have found, and I think that is really interesting, is that erosion is an exogenic process. So exo means external, outside, okay? Genic, okay, is the root word for genesis, for gene, and so on, is the birth or building of something. Okay, so an exogenic process is a process actually that, contrary to forming, okay, is actually a destroying process. Okay, and such as water flow or wind, which moves soil and rock from one location of the earth crust. So erosion is a process that changes the location of rock or soil, okay, of the earth features, and moves that. So erosion is a process that actually always is related to transportation, to movement. Weathering is the breaking down of rocks, soils, and minerals, okay, but it's not related with movement. So it says that weathering occurs in situ, inside, okay, basically in the same place. And so that is the difference between erosion and weathering, is the destruction or the movement of soil and rock, but one is with movement, the other one is without movement, okay? So weathering is different from weather, okay? And I think that what Nathan was explaining was the difference between climate and weather, okay? So I think that we talk about that in the lesson on climate, that climate is the normal state of the weather, okay, what you would expect. Weather are the actual conditions of what you get, okay? So, if someone asks, what's the climate of this place, they would be asking, what's the climate in La Paz, Bolivia? They would be basically asking, what is generally the climate in this area? But if they are asking, what's the weather, it would be, what's the weather today? Is it raining? Is it sunny? What is going on today? Okay? And so those are different concepts from weathering and erosion. So erosion is this process that is basically the effect of fluids moving. The fluids could be water, wind, okay, other rocks, ice. So we have lots of different physical processes that cause erosion. All right. So let's see. Haley says, so is it considering weathering when water gets in cracks, freezes, and then breaks rocks apart? That is a good question. So I think that is under here in the article, at least here in Wikipedia, they put it under erosion, okay? The freezing and thawing cycle, again, because even though it is not a huge movement, but the idea here is that the water gets in cracks of rocks, so it moves through. Go ahead. I wasn't sure either about which one was which, okay? But it seems that cycle of freezing and thawing is an erosion type of cycle, okay? So there's different types of physical processes of erosion. So we have rainfall and surface runoff. So whenever it rains, the water has to run somewhere, and that causes the rivers and streams. That is one of the main erosion agents in the world that actually moves large amounts of material, okay? So we see examples of that here, like in the Grand Canyon, a lot of erosion that happens through the movement of water. In coastal areas, the waves, okay, the movement of currents and waves also erodes the area, okay. So you can see the large amount of erosion and movement of soil that happens through water. I was looking, if we look here in Google Earth, it's really interesting to see the effect of erosion in areas, for example, like the Mississippi River. So we have here the Mississippi River, and at the delta of the Mississippi, this is the area where the Mississippi brings a lot of sediment, okay? It erodes the material from, all the way from the mountains where the rivers originate, okay? and is transported through the river, and it is deposited here in the Mississippi Delta. And you see how the river meanders through, and then at the end of the river it really deposits large amounts of material and builds new coasts, new shallow places. Okay, so this is a constant moving flow of material. All right, it's similar to the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon was formed also by the erosion of the Colorado River. Riley asked, is erosion similar to an earthquake? Okay, so an earthquake is the sudden movement, all right, of the plate tectonics. All right, we saw that in the previous lessons. And earthquakes can basically move a lot of rocks and materials. Earthquakes also form mountains, okay, mountain ranges and so on. And so they are kind of different processes. Erosion usually is a process that happens over longer periods of times, even though we are going to see that at some point erosion is similar to earthquakes in the sense that sometimes it also makes catastrophic changes of things. Okay, so let's see. Rodney asked, when you do experiments, do you always have someone nearby that is either just watching you do the experiment or helping you do the project, or do most projects by yourself? I like to have other people with me when I do experiments. I usually like to involve my kids in order to help me out, filming or something like that. But sometimes I have to do them by myself. Okay. So here we saw in the case there of the Mississippi River a very important feature of how the erosion of water happens and the sedimentation that happens. We are going to travel here now north to Norway and see another type of erosion that happens a lot with glacier action. So the coast of Norway is very interesting because it has all these fjords that are deep cuts into the mountains. So, so I'm sorry, I'm cutting out a lot. So we had the same problem, Haley, yesterday with the audio. And I think that is a problem with GoToMeeting. So I'm going to pass feedback there to GoToMeeting about the audio cutting a lot. I'm going to also, let's see, yesterday something that we tried was to stop the webcam. So I'm going to stop the webcam and see if that helps, all right? So you let me know if that is improves things. So it seems that it's still going on. Well, let me try to, I'm so sorry, I really apologize for that, okay? But the erosion that glaciers... Go ahead.
I said, do you want us to stop you if you go silent for a little while and say, repeat that? Do you want us to do that, or do you want to just keep going with the lesson, whatever you miss?
Yes, I don't know really what I can do. You certainly, if you miss something, okay, that you think that is really important and you want me to repeat it, put in the chat repeat, okay, and I'll try to repeat the concept. Would that be okay? Okay. I hate doing this. I'm also videoing, recording this lecture, so If you really miss a lot of the audio, you can watch it later, okay? But I would hate for you to have to spend that time also. So let me see if we can do this, okay? Haley says perfect. I don't know if perfect means I agree or the sound is perfect. So the fjords in Norway are made really by the movement of ice, of the glacier ice, as it moves down the mountains. The ice basically falls onto the glacier, and slowly the glaciers move downhill, and they basically cut away and erode a lot of rock and material, and that is what forms these fjords. So the erosion of glacier action is also very, very important part of weathering. And I have here several pictures of the effects and the erosion that glaciers make. Whenever you see a glacier, okay, this picture is not very, very large, all right, but you would see that the snow doesn't look very white. Whenever there is a glacier moving, the snow looks kind of dirty, all right, kind of grayish. And that is because of all the materials and rock that are underneath mixing and moving together with the glacier, okay? So really cool pictures and diagrams of how the glacier erosion happens, okay? So let's see, so we have rainfall, rivers and streams cause erosion. We talk a little bit about coastal erosion, the erosion that is caused by the effect of the waves, glacier erosion, floods, of course, freezing and thawing. That was something that Haley mentioned, and it's really interesting that I was mentioning here what are the different types of erosion processes that are mentioned here in the Wikipedia article. The effect of freezing and thawing is really interesting because this is a process that erodes very little things at a time. You don't see a whole lot going on, and then all of a sudden, when the water makes a crack big enough to erode, the glue, the sediments that are gluing the rock, large rocks fall. And so that is a very big movement of rock. So here we have pictures of the Grand Canyon, and most of the erosion of the Grand Canyon is caused by water. Some erosion is caused by wind. And a lot of these movements actually are also caused by the thawing and freezing effect of water. So that is also a great actor in that. So Anika, the árbol de piedra is, let me see, are you talking about this one here? Oh, árbol de piedra in el altiplano of Bolivia. Yes, this is a very interesting formation. Okay.
It's not beauty.
Yes, beautiful. And this structure, okay, is eroded by wind. So wind is also another agent of erosion. Okay. Have you seen, Anika, have you seen the Árbol de Piedra? Have you visited this area, or you just, you find that it's also here in the Altiplano? In the Altiplano, by the way, it's very, very windy area. Okay. So there we talk about different erosion processes and how they happen. Now let's talk a little bit about weathering. Okay, and weathering is a lot slower process. And here in the article they show about what are the different agents that cause weathering. So physical weathering caused by thermal stress. So here you have the case, for example, in this picture, where just the temperature differences between day and night, okay, of the rock heating up and then cooling down, contracting and expanding, it causes breaks. It breaks in the areas where the rock is weaker. All right. Rust is a weathering factor. That's exactly right. So Annika says we have driven through near the altiplano. Through or near the altiplano. We haven't gotten to see the tree yet. Okay. Hi, Rodney. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's see a few of the other weathering processes. So we have thermal stress, frost weathering. Okay. So you see, Annika, I don't know if this is kind of in agreement, because you see here the frost weathering, it would be kind of similar to the action that is explained here as erosion between freezing and thawing. So I don't know whether it's a weathering pattern or an erosion pattern. I would say that if the water actually seeps through cracks where there is movement, okay, of water, then it would be considered more of an erosion process. Maybe both, all right? So depending on how you classify it. The main issue is really not so much about differentiating what is a weathering process or an erosion process, but to understand how these processes happen, how they occur. Okay. This is an interesting one. It's called exfoliation, and is caused by the heating of the surface of rock. So you have that when the rock is being heated up, it is expanded, and then it basically breaks in horizontal slates because the rock underneath is cooler. Okay, so that is another weathering process. Okay. There are also biological processes that cause weathering, plants and so on. They actually cause weathering. And so we have, for example, here you have plants growing in crevices of rocks, and many times, even though small plants grow there, they actually, over time, could cause breaks in the rock and actually break it down. You see here the spots on the rock, the darker spots and greener spots. Those are also lichen, which are basically living organisms that live on the rock, and they also cause a weathering effect. Okay, yeah, I went there and lifted these rocks up, then put them down. Yeah, you should tell the geologist. That's right. Here we have a case of, weathering by rain and acids, okay, of the rain and so on, lichen also growing on a statue, and you see how the statue is being eroded in this case. This happens everywhere, okay, so not just here on George Washington. but anything that is exposed to the elements long enough shows effects of weathering. Okay, the process of sedimentation is basically the transportation of material and then depositing this material in other places, in lower places. So we were looking there at the Mississippi River, the fjords in Norway. You see similar processes. Okay, here is the area where I grew up. Let me put the north. I always like to have the north pointing out, up, not necessary, but so here in this area where I grew up, the Paraná River is a huge, huge river that brings a lot of sediment, okay? And it is interesting how the water of the Paraná River is very brown. And so when it empties, both the Paraná River and the Uruguay River here in the Rio de la Plata, in the delta, it deposits a lot of sediment on this area, okay? In fact, here in front of the city of Buenos Aires, in order to keep the harbor open, they have to dredge the river. They have to open the canals and dredge the river 24 hours a day. 24/7. They have to keep the canals open because, and you see here how they have also canals and everything. These canals need to be open in order for ships and transportation to get through. And I've heard that if they would stop dredging these canals in the harbor of Buenos Aires, the harbor would be landlocked in a couple of days. Okay, so it is very interesting how much sedimentation the river moves throughout. Okay, so that is another process of sedimentation. Do you have any experience with erosion or sedimentation where you live? Have you noticed any of these processes at work in the area where you live? Rodney says, I garden. So you garden, okay. So does that count? All right, let's see. What are the processes that you see in your garden at work, okay, that can be considered sedimentation or weathering or erosion? That is a very interesting point, and actually is something that I wanted to bring up. And it certainly does count. Go ahead, Rodney.
Several last 2 years ago, we planted a garden and we watered everything via irrigation ditch. Put the hose on the top of the row and let the water just run down the row till it soaked up the soil. It would erode the row quite a bit. You just have a lot of mud at the end of the row. And a lot of times we'd have to, the sides of the rows would erode into the ditch and get watered down over and over. This last year we got a different form and it's been able to keep a lot less erosion in our garden, but still you could tell that a good shovel full of dirt.
Excellent. So you see that even in a garden,
that's one way I can understand it pretty well.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So it is very interesting that you see even in a small garden, okay, you have to keep the water moving, and the water actually erodes the ditch, all right, where it should go, where it should move, all right. So it's really interesting that you have to keep the water moving through these channels. Let me see. There's some comments here. My aunt lives in North Salt Lake on the mountain, and there was a sudden landslide that wasn't expected last fall. It took a big chunk out of the mountain. So that is, and then Sabrina, let's see, comment of Sabrina. A few years at girls' camp, we had a huge rainstorm that flooded the river and washed out part of the river bank. several trees had fallen over and a couple girls almost fell into the river or under a tree root ball when we went on our hike. Okay, I remember that in the news. The river here is weird. Annika says when it rains, it runs multiple shades darker brown like chocolate milk. When there is no big storm, it is closer to a yellow brownish clear liquid. All right, so here Annika is saying they are in Bolivia, the river by La Paz, that when there's a lot of rain, it brings a lot of sediment, and that changes the color there of the river. The examples that Haley and let's see who was also Sabrina bring up, all right, are actually part of the erosion process that I want you to be aware that sometimes the erosion happens little by little, you know. It goes, you know, like the water taking, you know, eroding the ditch, okay, putting sediment into the ditch. But sometimes there are some processes that gather enough pressure or momentum that then cause a big sudden change on the erosion process. So you have like landslides, you know, big rainfalls, flooding. Those basically are huge erosion processes that happen in what is called a catastrophic way. Okay, so let me see, catch up with some of the comments here. When I go to Lake Powell every summer, I see changes in the rocks all around the area. They are either all gone or shape a different way. It is really cool. Also, when it rains there, it makes little grooves on the top of the rocks as the weather comes down, so you can see the grooves the rain makes in the sandstone. That's right. So there you see a process both of weathering and erosion. There are about 50 rivers here, one for just about every subdivision of the city, I would guess. They all are about the same. So the city of La Paz is at the foot of huge mountains, and so when it rains, you see a lot of weathering process. The reason why I kind of went here, I zoom in to Brazil area. I remember when we were going to the Sao Paulo temple, I was 13 years old, and the fields, they are not very huge mountains in these areas, but they are kind of hilly areas, and all the agriculture was done in terraces. Okay, so you could see every place where it was cultivated, it was kind of following the slope of the mountains. Let me see if I have some pictures of that. Let's see. No, I thought that I had some of that, but it's really interesting how the agriculture was done all in terraces to show that process. Let me show you another example of big erosion and sedimentation in the area, one area that I went to okay, so here is the border between Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil, and there's two rivers, the Paraná River coming down here from the north, and then the Iguazu River that comes down here from the east going west. In this area you have the Iguazu Falls, the very famous Iguazu Falls. Now, right above this confluence between the two rivers, you have that Brazil and Paraguay made a dam, okay? And they make a huge dam. This is one of the largest dams in the world, okay? Itapu is called, all right? And it stops the Paraná River. So after the river, what happens is that the river comes from the north, from from Paraguay and Brazil, and brings a lot of sediment. So the water of the river as it comes down is very brown. But all the sediment gets accumulated here in this huge artificial lake, the Lago Itapu. All right? And then after the dam, the water of the Paraná River comes clear because there's no sediment. All right? And so when the water goes down and then it joins the Iguazu River, joins the Paraná River, you see the difference in color between the waters of the two rivers. So the Iguazu River has all the sediment, okay, red land really is very, very red, full of iron, and so it mixes then with the Paraná that comes clear, and you see the differences there at the confluence between the two rivers. Okay, there's here another river coming from the Paraguay side that also brings sediment, and you see how then the water starts mixing the sediment back. All right, so Christopher says there, I have been in Iguazu, yes, the last time I've been there twice, once when I was 10 years old, and the other time in 2009, we went with my family, and I remember being here, right here, there's an area where you can visit and see the confluence between the Iguazu and the Paraná rivers, and see basically all three countries at the same time. You see Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina. Okay. Yeah, the colors are striking, really. Very, very striking. If it wasn't because of the Itapu Dam above, the water of the Paraná River was always also brown. Okay? So it was also that way. Yeah. So let's see. Christopher says that at one time there was such a lot of rain in where he was that there were several inches of water in a few minutes and the roads were like rivers. That's right. So that's another case where you really it's interesting how sudden the changes can be. So Rodney says that would be so strange to be swimming and all of a sudden you are swimming in brown water. So yeah, you really could if you were to swim. There's a very strong current here in this area. So I've never seen anyone swimming. Okay, but I guess that you could. But yeah, if you would be swimming, you would see you would go from one type of water to the other. Okay. I've been in areas down in Rosario. Let me see if I can go really fast to that area where I grew up. And we would go swimming in the Paraná River several times. Okay. All right. Let's see. So this is the Paraná River. Okay. Yeah, this is the area where I grew up. Okay, and back now, down now, again, the sediment, the river gathers sediment again, and so the water is all brown, all right? But there are some lagoons where the water gets kind of steady and it doesn't move that much, and so the sediment drops down, and the water in this lagoon is very, very clear. It's really interesting, because you have that, just a little area and you have brown water with sediment and then very clear water without sediment. Okay. The sediment basically drops down as it doesn't move, as the water doesn't move. Okay. That is the same river. Yeah, that is the same river that we would ride buckets in. We would go from here, okay, from this area. There was, when I was there growing up, this bridge wasn't there. They have built this bridge before, I mean, after I moved here to the United States, it's a really cool bridge. Okay, huge bridge, but it wasn't there, and so we would have to cross in many different ways, and sometimes we would get buckets, okay, and cross back. Okay, the current would take us from here, we would cross around, and then end up here in this beach area. All right, so really fun. But you can see in all the areas where the water doesn't move and is kind of stationary, that is more clear. So yeah, so this says, Danica says, La Paz is the canyon, so we are surrounded by mountains, but we are about 11,000 feet above sea level, with lots of cliffs jutting out into the middle of a town. Everything is connected to the city. We get to see lots of erosion. That's right, lots of erosion in that area. So the city is at 11,000 feet, so that is about the top of Mountain Panolos, if you are familiar with this area here in Utah. Okay, all right, so we talk about these different processes of erosion, weathering, sedimentation. Okay. Oh, so you actually have to even go higher to get to the city center. So the city center is even higher than that. That is interesting. I would like now to, as we see, I want you to understand that the processes of erosion are both, happen slowly, but also there can be very big sudden changes. Okay, so for example, the erosion happening here to this cliff from the water underneath is constant, and you don't see a whole lot of movement until all of a sudden the whole side of the mountain caves and the house falls down. Okay, so so that is a very interesting thing, that you have that erosion is both a slow process and then a sudden process. Okay, now let's see. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live there, but lots of people build homes right there in the coast, in the ocean. They pay a lot of money for that. So Christopher says, don't live by the ocean. But yeah, so you have to make choices, I guess. Yeah, I would say also, don't live by a cliff. Okay, so if you want to be safe, don't live by places where it can be eroded. Now, it is interesting that sometimes these things cannot be predicted very much. In the area where we live here in Saratoga Springs, we have a mountain. It's not a very tall mountain, but a couple of years ago, it was in 2012. Yeah, I think that it was 2012. In the spring, in the summer, we had a lightning fire, and the whole mountainside burned. Okay, so and that happens very often. This is a natural fire and everything. This was actually pretty big. Actually, this one was not caused by lightning. It was actually caused by some people shooting something, and they started a fire. Okay, and the fire raged and burned a lot of vegetation. It put about 3 or 4 inches of ashes over the whole side of the mountain. Then in September, during the fall, there was one night and one day that it rained a lot. It rained continuously. And then all of a sudden, again, the catastrophic change, all of a sudden, all that ash of the fire mixed with the water became unstable. It was filled with water, and the whole side of the mountain started moving and it caused a lot of flooding, and it accumulated in the canyons and it started coming down. Okay, so and it flooded 11 homes. I remember on a Sunday we had to go and we started taking mud and water out of these homes and everything. So there you see a process of erosion that happened, slowly, and then all of a sudden becomes very unstable and very big, sometimes violent changes. Okay, so that is kind of the very, very interesting. Where was this again? This was in Saratoga Springs. Okay, so let me see if I can go really quick to that area. Okay. So right by the west of Utah Lake, okay. Okay, yeah, that's by Lehigh, west of Lehigh. I still have the pins here on my lesson. So this is Utah Lake. So the area where we live is right here, and this is what is called Lake Mountain. And the fire was all over this area, okay, so over this area. And then the flooding came down and it flooded some of these homes that were close to, there was a kind of a canyon. You can actually see the area where the water would flow, okay, and so it actually flooded in this area. I believe that it was actually here on this side that the flooding happened. Yeah, this park was the main park that got flooded. Okay, so it was actually really, really yucky mud because it was all the ashes of the fire. So did those people build their houses on the edge like that was on the landslide on the Google side with the picture of the Grand Canyon? No, this is a very stable area. Yes, and that is similar to what happened in Santa Queen without the fire. But again, you had the side of the mountain that was overloaded with water, and then all of a sudden everything started moving. When the earth reaches kind of a saturation point of having too much water, then it starts these movements. Okay, this is the area of Santa Queen where Christopher was referring to. All right, so now, how does this apply to us? Are there some kind of spiritual lessons that we can learn from this? Okay, I want you to take you to the story of Joseph. Do you remember Joseph who was sold to Egypt? Okay, you remember in the story that when Joseph was sold to Egypt, he ended up being bought by Potiphar, okay, and he became kind of a servant, a slave there in Potiphar's house. But because he was so good, Potiphar basically put him over everything in his household. And Sabrina says we need to make sure that our testimonies are well fortified and stable so we don't erode away into apostasy. That's right. That is very, very right. Okay. In the story here of Joseph and Potiphar, we have that his wife, Potiphar's wife, cast her eyes upon Joseph. Okay. And she said, "Lie with me." And Joseph refused her and basically told her, your husband, your master, my master has put me over everything in this house except for you. Okay. I'm not going to do this. All right. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? All right. Did Potiphar's wife give up? This is a very strong response that Joseph gave to her. Okay, Potiphar's wife didn't give up. All right, see what verse 10 says. And it came to pass as she spake to Joseph day by day. Day by day. Can you imagine the pressure here? Okay, she didn't give up. Okay, yes. But I have a question for you. Okay, this is kind of an extreme case where you see, a woman doing this. Does Satan give up? Okay, no. He will continue, okay, to try to erode our resolve, our testimonies. All right. And so the same way, that Joseph day by day was being tempted until actually kind of a sudden change happened. All right. One time, all right, it says in verse 11, Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. I really think that here Potiphar's wife arranged for sending everyone away. Okay? In an Egyptian home, you would never have the case where the woman of the house would be completely alone. Okay, so here probably she did it. Okay, she caught him by his garment. Okay, tempting him again, and Joseph basically had to left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. Okay, so he had to leave all of a sudden. Okay, so I remember my mission president used to say to us in the mission, he says, if a temptation walks by through the door, you flee by the window. Okay, that is kind of a loose translation of that. But basically is don't confront the temptation, just flee away, go away. All right, so if temptation comes through the door, don't try to escape through the door. Okay, go away some other way. All right, Annika, you heard that before. Question, you have a question, Rodney? Go ahead. Rodney, do you have a question?
What kind of clothes did he wear?
Well, probably, an Egyptian slave would just probably have a tunic. Okay? So he just left everything there and ran away. Okay? His main thing was to get away.
What I'm trying to maybe point out is that he might have literally gone naked, running away from her.
Yes.
You could have ripped his clothes off of him. And he's like, no. He's like, I don't care of this embarrassment of running around. I'm just going to get out of there. I know I won't do anything.
That's right. That's right.
We may have to be embarrassed like Joseph. Just get out of the situation. You tell your friend, no. You do what you're supposed to. You may get embarrassed, but you will not do something wrong.
That's right.
That's why I wanted to point that out. He probably is naked, and that's embarrassing.
It is very embarrassing. Okay, and besides, here you have, this was a trap. This was really a total trap. But you can see, okay, that Joseph didn't care about the embarrassment, and he didn't care about the consequences. What were the consequences for him about this? Okay, she basically was, mad, okay, and turned on him, and she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And then she accused him, that Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. Okay, And now it's interesting that Joseph's master took him and put him into prison. Okay? What was the consequence for Joseph? Yeah, he was put into prison. And Rodney says instead of death. Can you imagine really if a slave would have tried to force himself upon the wife of the master of the house, he would have been killed right away. Okay? Why didn't Potiphar kill him? Why did Potiphar put him in prison?
He suspected Joseph.
Yeah, he probably suspected that this wasn't Joseph. He probably actually suspected that his wife was lying. Okay? He didn't say anything.
This wasn't the thing. So if you look at verse 20, is it verse 20? No, it's at the end of verse 19. It said that his wrath was kindled. Have you guys ever made kindling?
Yes, it burns really fast.
Yeah, what it is, you sit there and you have to work and work at it and work at it and work at it. So I'm guessing he didn't do anything for a little while. His wife kept pestering him.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Yes, that could be one interpretation. I actually think that probably Potiphar just sent him to prison right away. Okay, imagine, if this was going on, okay, as a husband, he would have wanted to either kill Joseph or put him away as fast as possible. But here, the fact that he put him into prison, really leads me to believe that he suspected that his wife was the one lying. Okay. Yeah, the consequences would have been the same, okay, but he was courageous to basically face the consequences no matter what. Okay. Now, the point that I want to make here with this story is here the fact there about what happened to Joseph day by day, how the temptation happened day by day. And that is the process of erosion. That is kind of the same thing that we are faced with little by little. Okay. Have any of you read the book Perelandra by C.S. Lewis? So C.S. Lewis is most known for writing, the Chronicles of Narnia, but he also wrote 3 books of science fiction. Okay, and the second one is they are all very interesting. Okay, the second one is called Perelandra, and it's a voyage to Venus, and it's basically a parable of the fall of Adam and Eve. All right, here in this book you have the case that the main character goes to Venus, being sent, okay, basically by God there, and he meets in Venus. He meets the Eve, okay, what would be it's called the lady, but it's the Eve character of Venus, and he arrives there right before the fall happens. And there you have Satan also coming, or someone representing Satan coming and trying to convince Eve to disobey the commandment of God. And the interesting thing was, and this is something that I never thought about it before, was that Satan basically was tempting this lady over time, over a long period of time, because she wouldn't disobey right away. But it was over a long period of time that he was, convincing her and talking to her and putting ideas into her head and this and that, and little by little until she actually finally disobeyed the commandment, okay, and caused the fall. All right. So it was very interesting for me to read that, because I could imagine, yes, that probably may have been how it happened, that it happened actually over a long period. Yeah, and Sabrina is true. She disobeyed one to fulfill another. C.S. Lewis doesn't get that part very well, in my opinion. Okay, so the end of the book is not exactly what I would have written. Okay, but it was very interesting to see there the battle between good and evil over time on the conscious. Okay, and it made me think actually how much that is the same with us, that most of the times Satan doesn't, we don't fall for temptations right away. Okay, we fall over time. As our standards are eroded or weather away. Okay, and so the one of the assignments for the lesson is to teach a family home evening lesson on how you personally and as a family can resist the erosion of moral standards around you. What examples of erosion do you see, and how you can protect yourself? How can you protect yourself? Okay, so that is one of the assignments. The other assignment also, I think that this is also very fun, is to look around and document examples of erosion, weathering, and sedimentation around where you live, right where you live, and write a 2-page report explaining these processes. Go and take pictures, and you can include pictures. The pictures are extra, okay? They don't count for the 2 pages, all right? So, all right. So, but I want you to describe what are the processes that you see. One of the things that I want you to really learn by doing this is the process of you looking, okay? A lot of science is actually looking carefully, looking closely at things, paying attention to the things around you, okay? And so that is why I want you to look at erosion, weathering, and sedimentation right in the area where you live. You can even look in your own home, in your garden, okay? Right around where you are, what are the things that you see that are being eroded, weathered, and the movements of sedimentation, okay? So that is what I have for today. I had actually more to talk about dawn, all right? But we ran out of time. So, now dawn is very close to reaching Ceres. So this is the view of Ceres from dawn. It's actually getting really, really close, okay? The trajectory we have that now, dawn and Ceres are really very close by, and the dawn, the probe, is going to start being in orbit around it, okay, around Ceres. So it's going to start going around these asteroids. All right. So we'll discuss more about that next time. So. Let's see, Anika says there is a huge upheaval in the road and sidewalk in the front of our house. I'll take a picture of that and the cliffs. Excellent. That is great. Okay. Sometimes you can even see how trees break up sidewalks and rocks and everything. That is part of weathering. So it's a biological process of weathering. Okay. Bianca, would you like to say the prayer for us? Thank you for volunteering or volunteering someone. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, our microphone is working. They can hear you.
Okay, please stop shaking.
Yeah, we can
say the
hear you.
prayer.
Go ahead, Bianca.
Go. Andrew.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for Dad, Mom, and everybody else. And please bless Trevina. I'm sorry.
Amen. Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Amen.
All right. All right. We'll say amen to that one. Thank you, everyone. If you have other questions, I'll stay.